Hey everyone. So I've been writing my next book recently, and I just wanted to do kind of like just like an update video about creating characters. And so, since I'm writing this book, I thought it would be a good time to show you exactly how I do, so you can see what I'm actually doing. So let's just dive straight into it. So I actually use Scrivener to create everything. So if you ever wonder what program it is that I'm using, and if we just look at the screen here, so I've got an actual section here on the right there for my characters. So if we start with the main character, so basically that's what I like about Scrivener, is you're able to put images into the various documents if you want. And this is just a bit of concept art I did for the character. This is the main character. Just someone I like doing, and it helps me to kind of visualize his character and who he is. So basically that's all what I'm going to run through. So basically the first thing is just gender. Usually I just, gender, what race they are, age, as you can see here, and then archetype. Archetype is essentially what role this character plays in the story. Are they the hero? If anyone is familiar with Joseph Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Faces, you'll probably be familiar with these different archetypes. You have, like the hero, the villain, you have like a shapeshifter, the shadow, and it goes on like that. Which is something I like to put in more for myself, because it helps to create, it helps to paint what kind of character this is. And the next part, function. Now I like to actually, this is something that helps you to kind of stop just putting in sometimes, as a writer, sometimes you can just put in a lot of pointless characters that you think, why is this character here? So creating function, this section function, helps you to really realise what this character's doing, what's their purpose in the story, instead of having pointless characters. So he's the hero, to show change and transcendence from shackled human nature to a realised human being. And I'll do that for everyone, all the characters. Next, now we actually go into the character himself. First off, parents. What were their parents like? Basically, I don't really go into massive detail, just kind of, as you can see, name, what they did, sort of what their behaviour toward the child was, or the character rather. I do that for both parents, and you can kind of like just go into some detail about how they may have, psychologically affected the character as growing up. Siblings. Does the character have brothers and sisters? Again, similar thing of what are the siblings like, and how may have they affected the character? Then childhood, literally just a description of their childhood, how it affected them, what it was like, things like that. It's in a sense fairly self-explanatory, really, when you look at it. It's, in a sense, I would say not a great deal of steps that I could say to kind of like walk you through it. What you see here is all that is just a description of the character's childhood, basically. School, friends, things like that. Then we go into their adulthood. Again, I tend to class adulthood any time after they left school, really. So this particular Kester, his adulthood starts when he was, as I put here really, when he was 19. And pretty much I tend to make the adulthood, I write it up to the events of the beginning of the story. really, because that's just what I do. And the next section here, defining moments. Now this is quite an important one, because a lot of times in life there are certain sort of incidents you can experience that change you, that maybe give you a different perspective, and that is what this is. So defining moments, example, when he realised the creativity of his imagination was like no one else's. That impacted him, obviously. Anything that impacted them a lot, that led them to some form of change, or led them on to becoming what they are now. When his father stopped him doing art, this character, his as a child, his art was very kind of like important to him, and his father stopped him doing it because he thought there were more important things he should have been doing at school. So, at his point of view, his father stopping him doing art was quite a big thing. And when he moved out from home, was living on his own. Things like that, just defining moments, which is quite important. It's quite interesting. Now this is kind of really also where we're kind of going into the character, or sort of into the character's mind, because really you need to know, when you're writing about a character, all this basically is just so you can internalise exactly who this character is and what is going through their mind. So aspirations. What does this character want to do? What does he aspire to do, or he or she? He wants to get out of debt. He wants to, because he's obviously in debt. He wants to be accepted into society. He wants to have friends, be able to have a nice girlfriend, connect with his suppressed imagination and create an artistic skills, and be happy. And the next part, secrets. Now this is quite an interesting one, because some characters have them, some don't. But secrets is something that will certainly, can certainly come in handy if you have two characters who maybe have a history. Maybe one side knows something. There's a whole bunch of reasons why secrets would be important. His secrets are he's never had a girlfriend, and there's this dark apparition thing that he keeps seeing that he doesn't know what it is. Not all characters have to have secrets. Don't feel compelled that every character you create has to have a secret, because they don't. This character does, because he's the main character, and most main characters have some form of secret. And the next part is motivations. What is driving this character? In this particular instance, not very much for this character, because at the beginning of the story he's very depressed, he's very unhappy. In fact, he actually tries to commit suicide near the beginning of the story, so there's really not that much driving him. A lot of times you could, if you were creating a profile like this for a villain, there may be much more, a lot more things driving them, but in this particular instance there's not. So the only motivation that he has is that he might come across something that could change his circumstance. The next part, attributes. Attributes is just generally, I try to make attributes just brief kind of descriptions, sort of off the cuff, very sort of just quick descriptions of what this character is like, sort of in a nutshell. So Kester, he's conscious of the public opinion, very depressed. He's intelligent, immotile, meaning he's unable to express himself. He's anxious in public, is convinced he is a waste of space, finds being around people difficult. And I just tend to go on like that. These are the sort of things that, especially sometimes maybe when you're writing the character and you're maybe stuck on a part and you think, I don't know how to describe that, or what should I make the character do? this is like things like this, you know, the attributes can be like quite a good reference point to look back to. You know, I mean, during the time that I've been writing this book, you know, I've looked back through all of this a bunch of times, which obviously comes in really handy. And quite an important one, you know, because you need to get this down, because is appearance, because you don't want to say at the beginning of the story that the character has blue eyes or blonde hair or something, and then later in the story you describe them as having different coloured hair. So yeah, appearance, Caucasian, he's white, 6 feet tall, he's a skinny, fat sort of person, short, dark hair, brown eyes, a bit pale, poor posture. You can go into as much detail as you want, really, if you think it will ever be relevant. And the last part that I've put here is personality. Now, really, personality is, I tend to make, when I say personality, really that is, I'm writing here, you know, how does this character actually come across on paper? You know, what generally is this person like, you know? So in personality, for this one, for Kester, I put, he has a very negative outlook on life, which shows through in his dialogue and problem-solving skills. He will often comment about how he doesn't care about anything or anyone, and his lack of self-confidence stops him from seizing opportunities. Often, it's a good place. You know, I like to put, you know, how does this character, you know, things like, how does this character talk? You know, do they swear a lot? Are they very well spoken? Because a lot of it's the sort of thing that will help give that, in dialogue, give that character their unique voice on paper. So you're not constantly having to add modifiers on the end of dialogue to kind of show that it's them that's speaking. And just generally what this character is like, what do they tend to do, how do they think about things, how do they generally go about doing things, you know. If we can see here, he will often resort to a fairly destructive means of problem solving, which shows through in his dialogue. He's fairly indifferent about females, as he believes he is weak and not worth their time, you know, and things like that. This one, honestly, in a sense, is probably, like, the personality section, to me, is probably one of the most important ones, because at the end of the day, it's basically portraying how am I portraying this character in the book, basically. So I find that one to be quite important. Now, there is one other that you can do, which I haven't actually done in this particular instance, but for certain types of stories, certainly maybe fantasy stories where or anything where you have this kind of very definitive good guy and a bad guy, is what does this character want to do, or what is this character trying to do, and also what is stopping the character from doing, what's stopping them from achieving it, which is quite an important one. But I didn't really do that for this particular one. But you can see this, I mean, in a sense, if you look at this, as a fairly long-ish profile for the character. If we look at, like, one of the other characters, in a sense, it's not quite as long. We can see here, you know, the archetype of this character, shapeshifter and ally. Because the main character, Kester, he can't really quite tie her down. He's not really sure. She seems kind of like shifting and two-faced, and he can't really see if he can sort of trust her. He doesn't seem like he's ever seeing eye to eye with her. And then you've got, like, no, that's the brother, hero and shapeshifter. I was actually supposed to show you this one, who is he's kind of like the mentor figure. But yeah, there's plenty of information on the character. I didn't put all the archetypes down in this story. I just because you've got other things like Threshold Guardian or the Shadow, And then a villain, there isn't, in this particular story, there isn't a villain as such to put. So, and this is interesting, actually, something I did with this character, the Vi, her name is, who is like a shapeshifter ally, who I just showed you, is that she often covers up her personality. And this is the sort of thing where creating profiles for characters like this really come in handy, because she doesn't really tend to talk in her natural state very much. As we can see here, I've put, she's become very good at covering up, her personality with like a false persona. And she has two main personas she switches between. The fun-loving girl, she comes across as upbeat and laid back and tends to act a little silly sometimes, but generally a likeable person and is an extrovert. And then she has this other persona which she will often put on in public, which is almost in a sense like very kind of, there's a real dichotomy in these two kind of personas she puts on. The action girl, she comes across as fairly analytical and wants to know the details about things so she can take action with more efficiency. She tends to be a little distant and sometimes impersonal, but shows signs of being both an introvert and extrovert. So on paper, they two of them come across as very, kind of very different, which again, from the main character's point of view, only increases his sense of her being sort of very shifting and two-faced, and he's not able to tie her down. Not sure where her loyalties are or things like that. So yeah. And things like that, especially if you have characters like that, characters who are covering things up. This is definitely where, creating profiles like this come in handy. So that's pretty much it. Yeah, the program I'm using is Scrivener. I used to use Word, but to be honest with you, I like it a lot more. Just being able to do this, I can put, you see there, my pictures. Things like that, and all the chapters in the book, as you can see, you can break them all up and create all these, just various notes and stuff like that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully, I did a bit of a better job in just kind of like explaining things, and I hope. You kind of like get something from that, maybe if you've had trouble getting your characters down, getting them on paper sort of thing, or where they are. But so yeah, that's pretty much it really.